Yakbanda 11 says, where does Rory McIlroy's Grand Slam rank in terms of all-time sporting achievements? And we also
Um,
had a question from Andy Snap 200 as well, relating to favourite sporting moment ever. So I guess if this for you ranks very highly, it might be your favourite. Are they the same thing? And how
uh,
high something ranks and how much you enjoy it?
yes, I think so. I've always said, and I've said it on this podcast several times, that the two most amazing things that I've ever covered were Tiger Woods winning the Masters in 2019 and Tom Brady leading the New England Patriots to the Super Bowl when they were 28-3 down with about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and being at both and being in the presence of greatness. And that was definitely the case at Augusta. But the added layer on that, and I know that you and Kelly spoke about this, is that it involves somebody that you actually really care about. And we
Mm-hmm.
spoke about it, didn't we, with Colin Montgomery just
Yeah,
shy of
just
a year
last week.
ago when he didn't win the US
US
Open,
Open.
Rory,
Yeah.
about how you invest in these individuals, even though you don't really know them, but you have this deep care of wanting them to do well. So because of that, because of the fight that was shown, because of it being this playoff against another sort of great of European golf, because of the sportsmanship shown afterwards, not only between the two players, but between their wives and families as well. And then the final bit, that it was at Augusta, that he did the Grand Slam at Augusta, not at a US Open or a USPGA on some random course, at the one major that is always at the same place every single year, where he'd previously had the biggest meltdown of his career as a kid. It's at number one. I can't think of anything that I've been present at where it has just ticked every single box you could ever want from a
Yeah,
sporting event.
as you so eloquently put it there, it achieves the emotional, it achieves the technical, if you want to call it that. It achieves, the hitting those historical beats as well. So it is hard to think of anything that could rank higher. I think when I was looking at sports that I cover, I was thinking I don't think we'll ever see a human win three consecutive Olympic gold medals for the 100 meters.
Yeah.
And I think Usain Bolt, having been at two of those Olympic Games and covered them, I think Usain Bolt is a talent of a century, and we probably won't see his like again in our lifetimes.
Mm.
And that's what I'm kind of thinking as well. That when we're in our rocking chairs and we can't even remember presenting Match of the Day, let alone the sports agents, the things that we would look back and think, gosh, that they were really special moments. And again, he was somebody that people seem to really connect with, and
Yeah.
he lit up rooms, and he had charisma. He still does, obviously, but just doesn't do it in a pair of spikes and some lycra. And he's a very easy person to enjoy being in a stadium with and watching him compete. So he was a special one. I think what Rory as well is that comeback, that human frailty, that sense of kind of we're all flawed,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's why we connect. And your great Manchester United team did that last week, one of the great comebacks.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's yeah. From a personal point of view, I would throw the
99.
the 99 in because I was there that night, just as a fan with my dad, who took me to my first United game in 1981. Who we'd been to games up and down the country together, and share. I can remember thinking as it approached, 90 minutes and United being 1-0 down, that um, this had still been an unbelievable season. And here I was at my first European Cup final with my dad, having, watched the team together for all these years together in the sort of been in the Spanish sunshine and had a couple of
Mm.
beers. And it was, so I remember thinking, even if they don't win this has been a very special day. And then of course what happened, and it turned it into the best night ever. Um, so from a personal point of view, because of that father son relationship and enjoying sport with your family, that is up there. That is up there as well for me.
You
But
you want to know that things are hard to do, don't you? When you know when they're achieved, and sometimes when somebody or a team is really great and dominant, we maybe start to get a little bit
yeah,
disinvested,
yeah,
uninvested with them. And I think when I look back to a couple of things that I've been at and worked on, one would be the 2003 Rugby World Cup final when England won, because I think there was a feeling there that England would go on to win many
yeah, yeah.
Rugby World Cup finals, and they haven't. And that shows you how hard it is to be the champions of the world. And I guess the other one that for me was very important was the Lionesses winning the
Mm.
Euros, because that was the culmination of years and years of a journey for women's football and women's sport in general. And I don't think the next one, if they were to win it this summer, would feel quite the same
No,
as that
no,
one.
no. The other thing which I find as well, and you actually delivered that with the Lionesses and your line at the end. But from my point of view, as a when I'm doing it on for the radio, I'm actually quite when these things happen. I mean, this is a bit of an in work thing, but I'm so delighted for the commentator who gets to call that moment.
Moment, yeah.
And towards the end, that Sunday afternoon in Augusta, sat with Ian Carter, who has been the BBC's golf correspondent for 20 years, really. I was actually nervous for him because this was what a moment for him to call Rory McIlroy's Grand Slam, and it may be a small part of the grand scheme of things, but I wanted him to have that moment in the same way Ian Robertson had the Johnny Wilkinson drop
Yeah,
goal in
yeah,
2003.
which
You
was
want
often,
it
it
for
was
your
such good.
colleagues who work in the
Yeah,
sport.
because those lines will get used again and
Yeah.
again and again, and that Ian Robertson line used to get kind of put on top of the TV pictures
Yes, it did.
because
Yeah.
the TV commentary was perceived to be not as powerful
Yeah.
as that of Ian Robertson's. Should we move on to another one?
Until we had to start paying for it, and then it didn't get used as much. Yeah, move on to it. Yes. So I'll. This is from Helen. So is there anyone that you've interviewed whose message has really stuck with you?
Well, it's not so much a message, but I will never forget when after 2008, which was the first Olympics I covered for the BBC, interviewing. I did a program for the BBC and got to interview some incredible people and spend the whole day with them. So not just a 13-minute sit down. I got to go to Monaco and spend the day with Novak Djokovic and sit down, have lunch with his family, and wander around Monaco with him. And I also did the same with Chris Hoy, who was at the time in Edinburgh, and Rebecca Adlington, who took me back to her first ever local swimming baths. And both of those two said something very similar, which was about how that when they were children, there was always somebody better than them. There was always somebody who was beating them, and how they had they were constantly chasing people, and they never dreamed that they would become multiple gold medal winning Olympians. And it gave me kind of, it left me with two thoughts. One, I think for children listening, it's so important because, this idea that you've got to be peaking at 13, 14 in any sport, whether it's football, athletics, and it's a long journey, and it's learning how to take those beatings and those disappointments and deal with them. And they both use them to really fuel them. But also just what incredible, resilient people, that they are. And one of the favorite lines, Rebecca, which is not a lesson in life, but the thing she said to me was that she used to think to herself when she was throwing up at the side of the pool because she pushed herself so hard, if the person who wants to beat me is doing this, fair enough. And I'm going to every day, if I'm throwing up because I've trained so hard. And I thought, oh wow, she's hard as nails. She was just, her attitude was just incredible. And I got such an insight into winners,
Yeah.
doing those kinds of interviews. And they stayed with me, those interviews.
I don't know whether it's a message for me, and I don't know whether it's also whether I'm getting increasingly soft and emotional in my middle age, and
Well, we're all hoping.
find tears just find tears appearing at sort of any given moment. But there've been two recently, and I could go back many years for other interviews, but just two recent ones stick. The Cindy and Gamba one. I don't think I've ever done an interview where I felt like my jaw was literally on the floor through
That was on the Sports Agents.
That was on
yeah.
the Sports Agents, and maybe I can only remember interviews of the last 6 months, which is why I'm going for these two. But that one was a genuinely jaw-dropping interview, and it was there were really important messages in that interview. But that insight into what she went through,
Mm.
and the sheer horror of some of it.
And not just as a sports person,
Just
because obviously there'll be a lot of people going through that in this
yes,
country right now,
yeah,
what she was subjected to.
100%. And then the other one does go back less than a month for Willie Mullins at the National after his horse had won, but his son was the jockey,
Hmm.
and the owner had lost his wife. His wife had died, but the wife had known Willie Mullins as well. And I find those interviews where the sporting veneer comes down and you're
Mm.
just talking to a human being, the most interesting and the most emotional. And for Willie to be in tears during that interview, which I was, sitting with John Hunt and we were both doing that interview, for Willie to be in tears there, and the Cindy and Gamble one, they were human stories, not sports stories.
Yeah, and do you find? I was thinking if I was going to pick a sports agents one recently, John McAvoy's interview came
Yeah,
in, obviously, and how sport had helped him transform his life. And that's a tale or a message that we go back to time and time again, isn't it? Do you think other sports, and I think racing in particular, I remember crying when Rachel Blackmore won the
yeah,
national for the first
yeah.
time. And do you think football doesn't necessarily always lend itself post match to the human side?
No, but I think that is down to.
The way we cover it,
Yeah,
maybe.
I think that's down to all of us. I think that's
Mm.
down to all of us that there is this sort of it's almost like a joust, isn't it? In a
Mm.
post match interview, to be honest, or even pre match interviews or whatever, that they feel like you're trying to catch them out. You feel that they're thinking that you're trying to catch them out, and all of a sudden, any kind of just normality and just having a
Mm.
chat goes in those less so in some of the sort of where you're away from a game and you can sit down and have a chat with
Yeah,
the player or
I mean, in
manager,
that post
but that
competition
post-match
environment.
thing just becomes
Mm.
this kind of invisible wall between
Mm.
between you both, where it's difficult to get any humanity out, and I think we're all responsible for that.
You get it on cup final days sometimes. And I remember Jack Grealish being very emotional when he won the Champions League with Manchester City and talking about his family and everything they sacrificed for him. And you kind of saw emotion that you don't always see from a footballer in that environment. And
Although the cup final interviews always takes me back, and we did this cup final together as the touchline like reporters of Arsenal Villa, and you got
yeah,
Villa
yeah,
and I got Arsenal, I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
and
Villa got smashed.
yeah, Villa got smashed. And I think Santi Cazorla may have been man of the match in that game. But I can remember, had a couple of questions with him, and then I said to him, and also defensively, Santi, I mean, you didn't give Villa a sniff. I know it was such a bizarre. I would never say that normally, but and fair play to him. He understood what it meant, because if somebody had done that the other way in a different language to me, some bizarre football cliche, and he answered it, I got so much stick afterwards for how do you expect him to know what that means? Blah blah. So I didn't get any emotion out there because I asked really crap questions. That's why.
Lee underscore J51 says in football, why can't we stop the clock when a player is injured like we do in rugby instead of adding 10 minutes to the end of a game? It would stop players faking injuries and wasting time and possibly stop injuries occurring. I don't know why we can't do this, Mark, because covering both sports, I do. It just feels like it makes perfect
Mm,
sense to take the time out when the time is being used up rather
yeah,
than adding it
yeah.
on.
I would. The only thing that I would slightly disagree with Leon is I don't think it would stop players faking injuries. I think they would still. I think they would still do it. Um, and I think we would. I think we would go back to, was it the start of last season where we had sort of 12 minutes of injury time in the second half, virtually every game.
But
And
it became a thing, didn't it, at the World Cup?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then it seemed to spill into
yeah.
domestic football for a
I
while.
I just cannot see how. Um, I don't think it would stop the faking and the wasting time. And the reason I say that is, it's 20 years since Chelsea won their first title under Jose Mourinho, and I was doing a show last night with Robert Huth about it, and Robert Huth said one of the things that Mourinho did right from the very start if he said in the last 10 minutes, if we're 1-0 up and you are injured, or you get tackled and get straight back up and don't go down and say you're injured, I'm gonna fine you or shout at you or whatever it may be.
Wow.
And it's the problem is that we see it with goalkeepers now. Goalkeepers go down injured in football matches more than ever before because they're the one player that can go down and they don't have to go off the pitch. So they could go down injured, and you watch managers bring all their players in, all their outfield players, do a few little tactical tweaks, and then they carry on. So the injury is used tactically in football, which it isn't as much or shouldn't be at all in either code of rugby. So I think that's the problem.
Yeah, that is the problem. I think it would be interesting to see what would happen as an experiment, though.
Yeah, it would. It would.
If,
It would. But the less the sort of referee has to bother themselves with, the more help they get should be a positive, shouldn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm dreading this next one because the answer I have, I'm not sure, is going to be very popular. But anyhow, Nyla GW, what's an unpopular opinion you have about modern sports culture?
Well, it's supposed to be unpopular. Go on.
I know, but I feel that but mine may be unpopular with you, and that's what
okay.
what really worries me. So what's yours?
No, go on. You go first.
I have a massive problem with when any sports person wins something or does well, that the immediate thing is and now they'll be favourite for sports personality. Like sports personality, and this is where like sports personality has any relevance to them within what they're actually. It's not like Rory. Oh, you'll be a favourite for sports personality now. Yeah, I know, but I've just won the Masters and a Grand Slam in golf, so that's kind of more important. So I hate.
I wouldn't put it to Rory in the immediate aftermath.
No, I'm not saying you would, and I'm not holding you responsible for it. But there is this kind of and that gives them a chance to win a sports personality like that. Like that matters, really.
Well, I was guilty of saying, just to friends and family, I can't see how anybody could do anything this year that would get close to him.
No.
And I did reference sports personality, but only because I was kind of meaning it as this is the pinnacle of sport this year. There's nothing else across the landscape of the sport that I could see would get close.
Well, two things. One, I haven't bugged you, so I wasn't aware that you would say that to friends and family. Secondly, it is by no means a criticism of you. It's just the fact that it becomes a sort of thing that. Whereas actually, what they've actually done is their main achievement. Is that all right? Will you still work with me?
Yeah, I don't think it's probably that unpopular either. I think there's a lot of people who'll be agreeing with you and sending comments in as well. So you're absolutely. I mean, Claire Balding, no, she'll be.
Oh yeah, I mean, she already has a dollar that she sticks pins into occasionally.
Unpopular opinion about modern sports culture. I kind of missed out the word culture when I was thinking about this, because I was, actually yours wasn't really cultural, was it? I guess it's just
your show is a big cultural part of the.
Cultural phenomenon. Yeah,
cultural phenomenon.
I mean, obviously, half and half sports scarves.
Yes. Yeah.
People who just are, and we've touched on this, haven't we, in terms of football tourism.
Yes.
And people flying in for matches, and I can understand that. And I'm friends of mine went to the Bernabeu a couple of weeks ago to watch the Valencia game because he wanted for his birthday to go to a match there, and doesn't support either team. And I do get this because I think it's bigger. I think it's cultural, isn't it, to go somewhere like that and to witness a match in those surrounds, such a historic team. So I understand people going to a match and not supporting, but going to a match and watching something that they don't really have any kind of care about and not invested in. But it's when you turn up for a cup final for your team and somehow you wear a scarf with the other team on it. I just don't get. And I know this is an age-old problem. It's nothing new, but you see it more and more, don't you? And I just don't understand it. And
at virtually every game, you now see half and half scarves.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a cup final, does it?
No,
every game.
No, every game. The other thing on modern sports culture and kit, modern football kit in the main are crap because the main because without sounding like an old fart, back in the day, every 2 years your kit would change. And some manufacturers would change the home kit one year and the away kit the next year. But each kit had a 2-year shelf life, which one is economically a lot easier for parents, but
Mm.
secondly got better designs. Now all three kits for all teams, apart from Brentford, I think, who still are on a 2-year cycle. But every team changed three kits every year, which means you kind of run out of designs. They're
Mm.
crap.
Yeah, yeah. I think they bear no relevance, do they?
No.
Where do those colours come from?
Oh, well,
There's no
just
essence
change.
or DNA
We'll
or
just change the white stripes to black stripes, then we'll go back to white stripes, and then we'll go back, just across the shoulder or whatever it is. You say they've got no DNA, but every press release claims, it's linked to the, we've used
some
bits of the
historical, yeah,
floodlight
the
pylon from the
1920s
19th.
team,
Yes.
yeah. There is one unpopular. This might be unpopular with some. I actually don't mind DJs in football grounds. I quite like the music. When
What?
you're in. I've come to this quite recently. As a broadcaster, it's a nightmare, obviously, when you have a very loud PA system. But when I go watch as a fan, I quite like the music. And maybe that's because I don't get out enough anymore and I don't go to clubs.
All right,
So what
hang
I'm
on.
doing is I'm
Right, hang
bringing
on.
together a
Hang,
night out with a football match.
right. There's several things. A football DJ doesn't equate to what it's like in a club. I wouldn't have thought.
Oh,
To,
don't ruin it for
I
me.
mean, I'm not sure that Sweet Caroline is still played, in every club up and down the country. Secondly, does your do you, if you don't mind a DJ in a football ground,
Hmm.
where are you when a goal is scored and then they play music?
Well, yeah,
No,
that's
uh,
let that moment just exist without the music. I
right,
don't think you
okay.
need to have music through the match. Although when I first started watching Kenny play for Wasps, the DJ in the ground would have a different track for each player who scored a try, so they were allowed to choose which track they wanted, which was quite interesting.
What was
Um,
Kenny's?
oh, I think it's simply the best.
Kenny picked simply the best for every time he scored a try for
And
Wasp.
he was top try scorer for
Oh
quite.
my God.
And there was another one. Do you remember that song? Do a little dance, make a little love.
Yeah.
Yeah, they used to play that. Or I'm not sure if that was just a generic one that they used to play. Every time I hear that, I just think of try scoring. But I was at a championship game at the weekend, rugby championship. Ruben was playing on loan for Cambridge against Nottingham,
Right.
and the DJ there was amazing. I wanted to stay after the game because I was going to get his number. He was so good. And of course in rugby there are breaks in play quite often, and he was ramping it up then when those breaks of play were happening. In fact, I have to say, the guy on the mic there was hilarious. When you get in a small sports environment, like a 1,500 people there watching this game, he was providing hours of comedy for anybody who wanted to tune into him. At one point, their captain went off to the sim and he went, the captain going for a well-needed break for 10 minutes or so. He was doing his own kind of comedy commentary, and I'm up for that. I have to say, if you
Okay.
if you want to give it a go on the mic, then I'm all
Oh
for it.
yeah, I don't mind. Yeah, that isn't going to happen at Sale though.
No, probably not.
Just to temper your expectations before you come up here.
So I'm guessing from your reaction you disagree about DJ. So let's move
I
on.
do. Yeah. Should we answer more after the break?
Go on then. This one's from Rob Barker. And he says, since you seem to be having a little bit of fun with Andrew Cotter recently, this was on the episode when you were away with Kelly.
So
Over
what were you doing?
Well, Cotter came on and told us that of 24 Masters, he's missed 2. And that obviously was one. He was doing the boat race. So we were taking the mickey a little bit about the fact that he'd missed one of the most iconic moments, as we've discussed on this podcast already,
Yes.
in sport. So Rob says, what is your sporting FOMO? So obviously Andrew would probably say that was his biggest FOMO. Which live sporting event in history would you have liked to have had front row seats at, and why?
Oh my word.
It's a good one.
Goodness me.
It's a good one.
I mean, you could pick so many different things, couldn't you?
I mean,
There.
pre us working, obviously, things. Is there anything in your professional life that you missed out working on that you felt a little bit of envy that those around you have worked on first?
Oh, I think if uh, because I wasn't doing I was only doing Radio 1 Sport at the time. I wasn't doing 5 Live. I think I would have loved to have worked on the 2005 Ashes and been part of the team for
That's
that
a
and
really that's a really good choice.
yeah, for that
Mm.
amazing series. I mean, having said that, I was actually at the Oval with a friend on the day England won and won the Ashes. So I wouldn't have been able to experience that with him if I hadn't if I had been working. But I think to have covered that
I
would have been
breastfed
great.
through that. So I had Ruben and Lois in July that year, and so it was a hot summer, and I just sat feeding babies, watching the Ashes. So that Ashes series
That
was
is an idyllic summer, that isn't it?
it was
Actually,
amazing. Yeah, it will forever be entwined in my memories of that. Do you know what I've had FOMO of very recently? Is you hosting the Carabao Cup final.
yeah, I can
And
understand
like
that.
you said there about the Ashes, sitting in the stand enjoying it was amazing, but I just wanted to be on the pitch talking to the players, and I thought, well, if I'm not going to be there, at least it's you. So yeah,
I can understand that. I'll
I was
throw.
almost ready to run down.
Well, I'd have just you could have just been part of
Here she
it. I would
comes.
wouldn't have stopped you at all. I think I'll go for something because you could go so many. Uh, I mean, you could go all the cliches. You could do England winning a World Cup, or you could do you
Mm.
know Muhammad Ali fighting, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's because this is on at the moment as well. But I wouldn't have minded being at the Crucible for Steve Davis, Dennis Taylor, and being front row for
Is that
that.
the black ball? The
The
black
black,
ball?
yeah, yeah. So and which finished at like at 2 o'clock in the morning and
Yeah.
final frame and on the black ball and all of that. Just for going back to what we were talking about, Rory, and the tension and the nerves and the butterflies in the stomach, particularly at an event where you have to be quiet as well. So
Mm.
the
Mm.
tension would have felt even greater. So just for something completely different, I'll go that.
Very good. Good answers. This is a bit deeper. Breach 87.
Ooh.
Do you think there will ever be equality in men's and women's professional sport in the UK? If you could change one thing right now to make that happen, what would it be? I
You go
just,
first.
well, I just don't think it's about one thing, which is not answering the question. And I think it's all about when you say equality, what are we talking? The same amount of people turning up for
Mm.
matches? Are we talking them being paid the same? Are we talking about the same branding and marketing opportunities? Are we talking facilities? Because actually, you could argue in lots of the women's professional football game now, the facilities have definitely
Mm.
got better in terms of where the training happens and the access to medical help and all those things that and sports science that were definitely very unequal. There's been great improvements there, um, and I guess crudely people look to money, don't they,
Mm-hmm.
and see that as equality and being paid the same. And it's hard, to make an argument right now for that equality because of the difference in the broadcasting contracts and how much they cost. And that's what it comes down to, isn't it? How
Mm.
many people are watching your sport? How much is your sport worth because of that? And so I can't see in the near future a time when those contracts are going to become almost
Mm.
the same, equal. I think one thing that might, and this is just kind of speaking out loud as I'm thinking, one thing that might help to bring them further in line is if you started putting pressure on broadcasters to say, right, you've got to buy these contracts together. These contracts are aligned. And that might make them put some more value onto, the women's contracts in terms of where they place those sports, where they put those matches. But I think it's just a myriad of things that
I think
that
that's
need to
still
keep
quite a
being.
difficult sell, isn't it, Gab?
Oh, it
Because
is, and I don't think it's.
as we've spoken about, let's take if you took the Champions League, I suppose,
Mm,
and um, and I'm not trying to be overly critical here, but Manchester City and Chelsea met in the quarterfinals of the Women's Champions League, and I covered them for radio, but that first leg took place at the Joy Stadium at City's Women's Stadium, but there were still empty seats,
Mm.
and both ends weren't
Mm.
vastly populated. And I wonder whether for broadcasters, whether that would be a difficult to say, well, hang on a minute,
No,
how do you equate paying for
yeah.
that in the same way that you equate paying for Arsenal Real Madrid in a quarter final of the Champions
Yeah,
League?
they're not the same in terms of their
Yeah.
attractiveness at the moment to an audience, are they? And that's what is fundamentally driving the difference in the value of those contracts. How we get those contracts closer together, as I say, I think it's a myriad of things. And I think what we should be doing, though, is not to keep asking that question, but also celebrating the great stuff that is going on. And so at the weekend, as we've discussed briefly on this podcast, we're now 4 rounds into the Women's Six Nations. England have, smashed everybody who's come up in front of them. They are by far and away the most dominant nation in world rugby, and certainly in the Six Nations. They've got France as their denouement on the weekend at Twickenham, but that'll be their closest game. But there were still 15,500 people at the Mattioli Wood Stadium, Leicester's ground at the weekend, with an amazing atmosphere, good DJ. Um, and although Scotland in the first half didn't get a hand on them really, in the second half they did put a little bit more pressure on England. It was still a sporting contest that you could celebrate how well England play, because they did play really well with 9 changes from their previous match. And I think it is easy to say, right, well, this isn't sport because it's very one-sided, but actually we've got to just keep on kind of pushing what is going on and celebrating it, and then point out to those, for example, in rugby, I'm just looking at this as one particular sport, point out to those federations who aren't investing enough. You've got to put a bit more in, because you've got these women
Mm.
here who want to play the sport. You've got to keep putting investment in, and try and make the dance floor a little bit more even so that everybody has an opportunity. But are we going to get to a stage where England sell out Twickenham every single Six Nations match? I don't think that's going to happen in the short term future.
All I would add to that, and I can only do, from personal experiences, to talk about the 100 really,
Mm,
and being involved on the board of Manchester Originals, and right from the very start with that, we were very clear as a board that we were one club that had two teams, and that's a men's team and a women's team. And right from the very start, everybody was going to be treated the same. Everybody's going to have the same access to facilities. The two dressing rooms that overlook the pitch at Old Trafford, where the teams play, the men would have one and the women would have the other. It wouldn't be that the men and the men's opposition have those dressing rooms and the women are in the training centre out the back. It was the opposition are going to be in the training centre out the back for changing. The men and women have the two dressing rooms. It might sound like an obvious thing, but not
mm,
everybody was doing it. It might sound like a small thing, but it's very
mm,
important. Um, we did a thing right at the very start. When people get given their caps and the number that they are as a player
mm,
appearing for a team. Um, we took our 30 players for men's and women's and did it alphabetically. We didn't give 1 to 15 to the men and 16 to 30 to the women. We did it alphabetically for the 30, which I think they all really
mm,
appreciated. Um, the match days are known as match days, not double headers. It's a match day, and it's Manchester Originals
mm.
against whoever. Um, and you can do all of that, and they sort of have training sessions where they help each other, and
And what about the, the
um,
the pay?
but and the prize money is equal. Men and women for the
Mm,
tournament, the prize money is equal, but the pay isn't, and the pay is not set by us. It's set by the governing body, the ECB, and the pay has changed this year. And the highest band for a man is 200,000, and the highest band for the women is 60,000, I think. And the increase for the men has been more than the increase for the women. The argument for that is that commercially, if you aren't paying that for the men, you aren't going to get the bigger stars coming,
mm,
because they'll just go, well, it's not worth us coming. So the pay is still the biggest issue, and the pay is still the issue where people will go, well, there's the inequality, and I completely get that. But I suppose it goes back to the commercial point of what, uh, because of history and how history has treated women's team sport, commercially it is a catch up. Not unlike, say, individual sports, as we've talked about before.
mm,
It's less of a catch up there, because women's tennis, I know prize money was different for many years, but women's tennis has always shared
The pot.
the pot, and has also shared the stage.
Yes, share the
Wimbledon
stage.
has
And
always been men's and women's.
athletics,
Yes,
same thing.
yeah.
So they're next to each other, side by side, each event, aren't they? So you don't
Team
have any.
sport has to fight history and bans and lack of opportunities and so on and so forth. So everybody's playing catch up.
Yeah. So in answer to the question, do you think there will ever be equality in men's and
Yeah,
women's
but it might
professional
not be
sport
in
our lifetime?
well, it might not be in our generation of covering it. I think if I look at my but also if you look at the amateur thing, the opportunities for my 11-year-old daughter are already more plentiful than they were for my 17-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's only a 6-year age
Yeah.
gap. But the
Yeah.
opportunities are there more for her than they were for my 17-year-old. So it is changing fast at grassroots level, but everybody
Yeah.
still has to play catch up.
Yeah. My Lois, my daughter who's 19, was chatting to a friend's younger sister and asking her what sport she did, and she said she played football. She was 12, and Lois said, "Oh wow, that's amazing." And she went, "Everybody plays football in our school,"
Yeah.
meaning all the girls. And Lois was telling me this because even in that 7 years, of her being at school at 12 years old, that just wasn't the case. So it's rapid, isn't it? It
Yeah.
really has moved on very quickly, and so maybe it will move quicker into that professional equality. But we are talking tens and tens and tens of years of difference and it would have to catch up very, very, very quickly for us to see it in our broadcasting
Uh,
careers. We might be in our rocking chairs.
Absolutely. Again, our rocking chairs feature quite a lot in this episode. Right, I don't know. Have we got time for one more?
One
do you
more,
want, do you want the
yeah.
one from Tracy or do you want the one from Tom?
Let's do Tracy.
All
shall
right.
we?
So Tracy says, "What is your biggest sporting ick?" And then she gives some examples.
Yeah.
One of them is actually mine.
Go on.
Which is footballers' shin pads.
Tiny
shin pads. I mean, when I used to play amateur football, okay, my shin pad was the size of my shin, strangely enough, with Velcro straps around the bottom and the top, and sometimes it had an ankle protector as well that you slotted through. I don't see what
They're
the
about
problem.
this big. They're about this big now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're now, yeah.
4 inches, maybe.
Yeah, they're about the length of my nose.
What is the point of them?
They can't protect
Yeah.
anything. There is
Well, they have to put them in. They have to wear them.
They have to notionally have some kind of protection.
Why would they not want to be protected?
That's the bit I don't understand. All of this kind of cutting holes in the back of your sock and
what's that about?
I mean, just to give yourself more ventilation, or whatever, and tiny shin pads. Just stick a big Velcro shin pad on. I actually used to wear a sock underneath my shin pad. Then
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. What? Then put the shin pad on, then another sock.
Okay, they're very good. They're very good.
What's yours?
Well, this sprang to mind, and I didn't even know it was a problem for me until, when the divers get into the jacuzzi after they've done a dive.
Yeah.
Why? What's that all about? Why have you got to have a jacuzzi now? Why? I have no. What's going on, and why has nobody asked them? Just stand there with your coach and get your score and move on. It's the most bizarre thing watching two fit young men have a jacuzzi together after they've just had a dive. I don't get it.
Some people would like that, I think, to be honest with you. Also, the other thing there is on the size of the shin pad, use a proper towel, lads. I mean,
yes, the chamois leather things,
just kind of flannel thing.
They wouldn't need to go in the jacuzzi if they had a nice towel to wrap around themselves, would they? I think it goes back to when they started their careers in underheated local council sports centres, and they were cold after their dives. But nowadays, if you've been in an Olympics diving stadium, they're boiling. Tom Daley does not need to knit. Put it that way. They are absolutely. You get kind of perspiration just standing there, so they're not cold. The other thing, and I was reminded of. Go on.
I actually felt myself starting to nod off at the last Olympics because it was so hot in one of those diving things, and I was on air.
I'm going to say on my answer.
I was on air, and whilst they were doing the commentary, I could feel myself. When you just start
you have to pinch yourself in that bit there.
I was like, oh.
Rubbish cheerleaders, right? Unless you're going to try and be the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, don't bother, right? At the weekend, I've already told you where I was at the weekend.
Oh.
Yeah. what was going I mean I don't know what was going on. I don't know what was going on. They had flags, they weren't spinning them at the same rate. There was, some people were wearing an outfit, others weren't, and I'm just do it or don't do it. But let's just call this now, okay? You're not adding to anything unless you are doing something rather spectacular. So the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not sure if you've seen any of their documentary about the cheerleaders, are phenomenal athletes, those women,
Mm.
right? And to get into the Dallas Cowboys cheerleading troop is almost as hard as getting an Olympic place in the American gymnastics team. And if you're going to give entertainment like that, go ahead. If you're not, let's just ramp the DJ up.
I think it is it is a college degree. I
Well,
think
it's a sport in
yeah,
America, isn't it?
so in the same way you will get a scholarship for soccer or
Yeah.
NFL or American football or whatever, you can. That is a genuine craft in America.
The last time I was in the States, I found myself sat on the edge of my hotel bed watching the intercollegiate championships by accident on sat
By accident.
watching. Yeah, when you turn the TV on, I love watching American TV because it's
Yeah,
always mental.
yeah,
Like, you don't what is this
yeah.
I'm watching? And I found myself watching on ESPN the intercollegiate cheerleading championships, and I was with my daughter, and we sat there and we had an opinion after an hour. We knew we were very strong about which college should be at the top of the leaderboard. We got very oops. We got
Got
very
so invested, you're knocking your mic and everything.
So yeah, I think it is catching on apparently here as well. There are university troops in the UK now, but not quite at that level. But just leave it out unless you're going to do it properly. Um, Also, another one. This was
Oh God, she's on a roll.
have you noticed referees across lots of sports are starting to get really pumped?
Yeah.
Like not just fit,
Mm.
they're starting to get really muscle bound
Yeah.
and and it's almost as if they're getting their shirts fitted in a way to emphasize this as
Well,
well
not
sometimes.
only that, but also very well coiffured as
Mm,
well. And
yeah,
look, most footballers have a haircut before every game, right?
yeah,
We know that because
yeah.
some of our pundits have a
Do it
haircut
before every
before
match.
every show that they do, right? I'm thinking there are several, and we certainly in the Premier League you will recognise them. There
You know
are
who you
some
are.
you know who you are. There are some who look like they are having a trim before every appearance, either as a referee or as an assistant referee.
Yeah, and I think it's got to stop.
Yeah, it has. I mean, look, as people know from watching clips of this show, once every 6 weeks I have a haircut and a shave. You don't need it any more than that.
You
Thank
see,
you very much.
we didn't know how strong those opinions would be at the end there. But thank you so much.
You can get in touch, the sports agents at global.com or on socials.
Hit subscribe or follow, and make sure you leave a review as well. You can catch up with all episodes of the Sports Agents on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening.
The Sports Agents
with Gabby Logan and Mark Chapman.